Good day, this is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you for Reason to Resist on February 28th, 2026, a day which shall surely live in infamy. In the early morning today, less than 10 hours after U.S. stock markets closed and the disgraced former president of the United States, Bill Clinton, testified about his sordid relationship with the Zionist pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, the Trump and Netanyahu regimes launched their latest war of aggression on Iran. Today, I'll share with you what we know thus far, but before I do that, I ask you to bear in mind that I've not been able to verify all of the videos and photographs that I'm going to share with you. What I can say is that these images and videos were published on resistance Telegram channels that I followed for years, and I've generally found these channels to be reliable sources of information about what is happening in West Asia. But that, of course, is not a guarantee that these images and videos are what I believe them to be. So please accept this information with a note of caution. And of course, before I continue, I'd like to remind you that if you find this video to be informative, please like and share it. And please help us to expand the reach of our unapologetic resistance journalism by becoming a subscriber of Reason to Resist if you are not already one. Now, let's get into it. So shortly after midnight Montreal time, the morning in West Asia, the Netanyahu regime announced that it had launched what it described as preemptive strikes on Iran. Originally, media reports suggested that Israel was acting alone, but Trump soon took to the airwaves, I believe at around 3 in the morning, published a video of himself flapping his gums, announcing that the United States and Israel had launched joint attacks on Iran. Of course, even that is misleading in an important respect, because Israel, in relation to the United States, is a pipsqueak in every conceivable sense, economically, militarily, politically, territorially. And for this dastardly duo, to wage a war on Iran, which has a population of some 90 million people and is as big as Western Europe, and has one of the most sophisticated conventional missile arsenals in the world, it's very clear that the United States not only would have to participate in that attack, that war, but would have to lead the effort. Quite apart from the fact that it has by far the world's largest military budget, it has a military intelligence gathering system, ISR system, which is second to none and vastly superior to that of Israel. And given the distance of Iran from the genocidal Israeli entity, the use of American intelligence gathering capabilities would be critical to the conduct of any war against Iran. So for that and a whole bunch of reasons, the idea that they're equal partners in this criminal war is frankly dubious in the extreme. This is a US-led war of aggression on Iran, which is being aided and abetted in every way by the US government's rabid Israeli attack dog. Now, as I mentioned, or may have mentioned, the genocidal regime has tried to justify its latest crime against humanity as a preemptive strike. Here you can see an article published hours ago by the Times of Israel, which characterizes Israel's attacks on Iran as just that, as preemptive. Notice the headline of the article makes reference to sirens sounding across Israel. Indeed, that is true. Multiple reports from multiple sources confirm that all over the genocidal entity, sirens have been sounding throughout the day and into the evening, as a matter of fact. But I want to address right now this claim that this war is preemptive in nature. This claim, by the way, is being repeated not only by Israeli media, it's also being repeated by Western media uncritically, including, for example, The Guardian. This is just a flat-out falsehood from the perspective of international law, that this kind of attack could fairly be characterized as preemptive. And the reason I say that is because there is no evidence at all that Iran intended to attack Israel if Israel did not launch a further attack on Iran. And under international law, if you want to have any hope in hell of justifying your attack on a sovereign nation as being preemptive in nature and therefore lawful in international law, you would have to demonstrate not only that that state that you targeted has the capacity to strike you, your state, you would also have to show that it has the intention imminently to use that capacity to attack your state. And the intention was lacking. There's no evidence that Iran had any such intention. If anything, Iran has demonstrated beyond a shadow of a doubt by refraining from attacking Israel, even after the Mossad in January openly bragged about having agents, provocateurs, in the Iranian protests that turned so deadly. Even then, Iran did not attack Israel, as in my opinion, it would have been entitled to do. So there's simply no basis to say it had an intention to attack Israel if it was not attacked. And therefore, Israel cannot credibly claim to have engaged in a preemptive strike. If the mere existence of the capacity to strike your state justified a preemptive war, then the whole world would descend into utter chaos and almost certainly nuclear conflagration, because every single state in the world is in close proximity to a state that has the capacity to strike it. We would soon find ourselves in hot wars from one corner of the planet to the other. So that is why international law is very strict in regard to allowing states to engage in preemptive wars, and this cannot possibly be a justification for this one. And I assure you nonetheless that the corporate media are going to do everything they can in a very clever way to lend credence to this idea. They're going to talk about Iran's capacity to strike Israel as if that in and of itself is sufficient to justify Israel's attack on Iran, but that simply isn't the case from an international legal perspective. And furthermore, they're actually lying about Iran's capacities. While Iran certainly has formidable ground forces and one of the world's finest conventional missile arsenals, it does not have, as the United States and Israel have claimed right up until the current time, either a nuclear weapon or a program that is designed to lead imminently to the development of a nuclear weapon. In fact, right up until this war was launched, Iranian leaders continued to say, and there's no evidence to contradict them, that they have no intention of developing a nuclear weapon and never will develop a nuclear weapon. And frankly, it's amazing they haven't done that already, given the level of aggression the U.S. and Israel have shown towards them. We've seen that in the case of North Korea, developing a nuclear arsenal becomes a virtual guarantee that you will not be attacked. But nonetheless, the Iranians, despite having the capacity to develop a nuke, have never done that. And this is something that has been confirmed by not only Western intelligence agencies, but by the International Atomic Energy Agency itself. So they're lying about Iran's nuclear program. And even if they were telling the truth about that, even if it were true that Iran was on the cusp of developing a nuclear weapon and had the intention to defend itself, that would not, through nukes, that would not justify what Israel has done. The fact that a state is developing nuclear weapons is not a basis in international law to attack that state. Again, if it were, then Iran would have had a justification for attacking Israel decades ago when Israel first developed a nuclear arsenal. And so too would every other state in the region, any other state which was within reach of those nukes. Israel is not only the only nuclear armed state in West Asia, it is also the only state in West Asia which is not a member of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and that is why Israel's nuclear facilities have never been subjected to independent international inspections, whereas Iran has had to face for many years the most intrusive inspections by the IAEA of its nuclear facilities. Again, all of this is a pack of lies and distraction, highly misleading, and has no semblance of legitimacy under international law. Despite all of that, Canadian Prime Minister Goldman Sachs, aka Mark Carney, has come out decisively and unequivocally in support of the U.S. Israeli war of aggression on Iran. And here is a statement which Carney and Foreign Minister Anita Anand put out today. I suspect that this statement was all ready to go. I doubt that they didn't have any indication that the United States was going to launch this attack today. But whether or not they had foreknowledge, this statement is an absolute disgrace. It says that the Canadian government, its position remains clear. This is the second paragraph. The Islamic Republic of Iran is the principal source of instability and terror throughout the Middle East. That is just such a shameless lie. The principal source of terror and instability in the Middle East is Israel and its Western backers, as evidenced by the tens of thousands and possibly hundreds of thousands of people whom Israel has slaughtered in Gaza, its illegal occupation of Syrian territory, of Lebanese territory, its relentless attacks on those states, its attack on Qatar. You know, it's not Iran that has done that. When has Iran launched a war of aggression on a neighboring state? Since the Islamic Revolution, it hasn't done that once. Just to give an example, it was Iraq under Saddam Hussein that attacked Iran. It wasn't Iran that attacked Saddam's Iraq. And it was the Western powers that encouraged Hussein to do that, and that provided Hussein with the ability to use unlawful chemical weapons on Iranians. So I could go on and on. The killing of Qasem Soleimani, the murder of Qasem Soleimani at the end of Trump's first term, the overthrow by the United States and Britain of Iranian democracy in the 1950s, and the installation of the vicious Shah of Iran. All evidence leads to the conclusion, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the greatest source of instability and terror in West Asia and in the world are the United States and Israel. So this is just a flagrant lie on the part of Carney. And then Carney says that Canada and its international partners have consistently called upon the Iranian regime to end its nuclear program. They have no right to demand that of Iran. You know, France, Britain, Canada, and other Western states, including the United States, they have nuclear programs. They have civilian nuclear energy. They have no right to demand that Iran give up its civilian nuclear program. And frankly, if they're going to sit idly by while the genocidal maniacs in Israel possess nuclear weapons, say nothing about it, they have zero justification for demanding that Iran refrain from developing nuclear weapons. And then they go on and they say, despite diplomatic efforts, Iran has neither fully dismantled its nuclear program, halted all enrichment activities. They have no obligation to do that under international law, folks, nor ended its support for regional terrorist proxy groups. It is, in fact, Canada's support for terrorist entities in the West, in West Asia, like Israel, that ought to be condemned here. And they say that by couching this language with the phrase, despite diplomatic efforts, Carney and Anand are clearly implying that the failure of the negotiations that have been going on up until now is Iran's fault, because Iran refused to surrender its sovereignty to the genocidal entity and its Western backers. This is completely dishonest in the extreme. It is very clear that the negotiations from the very outset, as we have said on this program over and over again, were kabuki theater, designed to persuade the American people, who are overwhelmingly opposed to this war, that Trump was actually trying to avoid it. The diplomatic efforts were a fake, a fraud, a phony, and their failure is entirely the result of the bad faith of the United States government, the Israeli government, and other Western governments. And finally, and this is the kicker, folks, in the second last paragraph, Anand and Carney say Canada supports the United States acting to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, to prevent its regime from further threatening international peace and security. So clearly, this amounts to an unequivocal level of support for the criminal war of aggression launched this morning by Israel and the United States against Iran. Now, this is particularly shameful because other Western leaders are not going so far. In fact, Spain has put out a statement, which, in the interest of time, I'm not going to show you all these statements, which actually opposes explicitly the unilateral use of force by Israel and the United States. Governments like those of France and the EU are expressing very significant reservations about this. Now, I don't really take any of that seriously. I think behind the scenes, they do actually support what the United States is doing to some degree or another, but at least they're paying lip service to the principles of international law, whereas Carney has flushed them down the toilet. And this brings me to Carney's speech at Davos, the World Economic Forum last month. You know, Carney was lionized around the world, including by many in the alternative media, for openly acknowledging that the concept of the rules-based order was a fraud. And at the time that that came out, that he made that statement, immediately I said that that speech, which everybody was calling a historic speech, would eventually be forgotten because it was a pack of lies. And in fact, what this statement issued today by Prime Minister Goldman Sachs and his feckless, useless, unprincipled foreign minister who used to be a law professor at my alma mater, Anita Nand, said, what this proves is that they remain as committed as ever to this morally bankrupt notion of the rules-based order, which is to say, we'll apply one set of rules to ourselves and a completely different set of rules, far more rigorous set of rules to our allies. And we will excuse any and all human rights violations and violations of international law by those who are allied to us, but we will condemn every violation of international law and human rights by those who refuse to do our bidding. And we will even fabricate stories about them violating international law and human rights when we, in our infinite wisdom, deem it expedient to do so. So Mark Carney is a liar, a bald-faced liar who remains as committed as ever to the rules-based order. And frankly, shame on all those people who were duped into believing that this man wanted to embark on a new era of universality, where the principles of human rights and international law are applied to everyone. No one should have taken this seriously from the beginning. The man is, after all, an incredibly greedy, slimy, neoliberal former banker from Goldman Sachs. And sorry for my language, but I just can't. I can't restrain myself today. It is just too much, frankly, to have to bear these lies. So far, the Zionist criminals have struck targets in multiple Iranian cities, including Tehran, Isfahan, and Iran's holiest city, Qom. That's not by any means an exhaustive list. It appears that the criminals have included Iran's nuclear facilities in their targets. Now, even if the U.S. and Israel had a lawful reason to attack Iran, which they absolutely do not, their attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities would still be illegal and criminal. For obvious reasons, which I hardly need to explain here, nuclear facilities have a special protected status under international law. And as a result of these criminal attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities, the Iranian government just put out a statement calling for an emergency session of the International Atomic Energy Association. And you'll see in the second paragraph, the permanent mission of the Islamic Republic of Iran to the UN stated, this request arises in response to the unlawful military attacks initiated on 28 February against the Islamic Republic of Iran by the United States and Israel. These acts of aggression follow more than 8 months during which senior officials at the United States, including its president, as well as authorities of the Israeli regime, repeatedly issued explicit threats of military action against Iran's peaceful nuclear program. And then at the bottom, in view of the extraordinary gravity of the circumstances, the government of Iran urges the Director General to immediately convene the special session of the Board of Governors so that member states may urgently address the ongoing military attacks and the unprecedented threats against the peaceful and safeguarded facilities of the Islamic Republic of Iran. One of the nuclear facilities is being developed by experts from Russia. It's the Bashir nuclear facility, and I saw a report today that it has been attacked. I don't know whether that report is accurate, but if that is in fact the case, that is one of the many ways in which this thing could escalate into a much broader and much more destructive global war. Now, in addition, the criminal Zionist regime claims today that it has attempted to kill Iran's supreme leader and other members of the top leadership. Among those targeted, officials said, are President Masoud Pezeshkian, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Commander Mohammed Pakpour, Iranian Defense Minister Amir Nazirzadeh, Ali Khamenei is the Supreme Leader's top security advisor, Ali Shamkhani, and former President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. And here you can see up on the screen an image a satellite image reportedly of the Beit Rabar Center, where the supreme leader oftentimes resides or is present. You can see that it has been, appears to have been destroyed by this, according to the satellite image. But the reports are that the supreme leader was not there at the time. And I've seen indications that he's about to give a speech. The Israeli media and the war criminal Netanyahu are suggesting, intimating, hoping that they managed to kill Ali Khamenei. And maybe they did. I don't know. They do tend to have a peculiar skill for murdering civilian leaders of neighboring states, wiping out entire governments. But be careful what you wish for, Netanyahu, because if in fact they have succeeded in killing Ali Khamenei, I think they're going to very possibly confront a far worse, hotter conflagration than they're already confronting. And the one they confront currently is bad enough, as you're going to see. Now, the Iranian government, for its part, asserts that the supreme leader and Iran's current and former presidents are safe. There's no evidence that any of them has been killed. Also, Iran insists that very few of its military leaders have been killed in this initial phase of the attacks. Therefore, it appears so far that these attacks have been much less effective in eliminating Iranian leaders than the attacks with which Israel launched its first war of aggression against Iran last June. What the Epstein regime did succeed in doing was destroying a girls' elementary school in the Iranian city of Hormozgan, killing at least 108 civilians, apparently most of them schoolgirls. And I've seen an image on resistance channels of one of the dead girls. I posted it on X, but I'm not going to post it here because of YouTube's restrictions relating to violent content. But I will show you and can show you videos of the aftermath of the strikes. Here's one of those. And here's a video of rescue workers trying to extract the bodies of the victims from the rubble.
کیف دانش آموز
Now, despite all of this horror, the daughter of Reza Pahlavi, which is to say the granddaughter of the former Shah of Iran, actually had the indecency to thank the war criminal Donald Trump for brutalizing her country today on X. There you can see the video of Trump, the 8-minute video of Trump lying through his teeth about why this war was launched. And Noor Pahlavi says thank you, with an emoji that is shedding tears and a heart, signifying her love for the orange war criminal. Now, I really am at a loss for words to express my loathing and contempt for people in the Iranian diaspora, especially those who come from the privileged family of the Shah, who have been living off of the wealth of the Iranian people that was stolen by their brutal criminal father with total impunity over decades when he was installed into power by the West, principally Britain and the United States, when they overthrew the democratically elected Mohammad Mossadegh in the 1950s. I really have nothing but utter contempt for these people, including Noor Pahlavi. And let me say it as loudly and as clearly as I can. If you are an Iranian and you support what Israel and the United States are doing to your country today, then you are a traitor to your country. And in my view, you should be hauled before a court and prosecuted for treason, an Iranian court in accordance with due process of law. I'm not going to comment on whether trials of that nature are possible in Iran. I don't know enough about the Iranian legal system at this stage to guarantee its respect for due process of law. But in theory, that's exactly the fate that you should confront. These people are war criminals. They obviously do not care at all about human rights or international law or the well-being of the Iranian people. And whatever your criticisms of the Iranian government may be, however justified they may be, there is absolutely no justification for supporting what the U.S. and Israeli governments are doing to Iran today and what they have been doing to Iran for decades. You are a disgusting human being if you support this, and I have nothing but condemnation for you. Let me be very clear about that. Now, within 2 hours of these attacks, Iran began a massive retaliation. It was quite rapid and quite impressive in scope. This, too, is a major difference between this war and the first war of aggression launched by U.S. and Israel in June of last year. In the initial phase of the 12-day war in June, Iran's government and military seemed to be, for a brief period, in disarray due to the attacks on their leaders and military facilities from Western agents on the ground in Iran. So far, I've seen no indication that this time around there are significant attacks, internal attacks being carried out by agents of the U.S. and the Israeli and American governments on Iranian soil. And that may be why Iran was able to launch retaliatory attacks on Israel and U.S. military bases much faster this time than they did in June of last year. So far, another difference between the 12-day war and this war is that Iran did not hesitate in this war to launch widespread attacks on U.S. military bases throughout the region. In the 12-day war, by contrast, Iran struck only one base, as far as we know. It was the massive U.S. military base in Qatar, known as Al Udeid. And that attack was limited and happened on the last day of the war. Many have suggested, in fact, that that attack was part of a deal, a secret deal, struck behind the scenes between the Trump regime and the Iranian government, whereby Trump would be permitted to send bombers into Iranian airspace to bomb one or two nuclear facilities that had already been hit, and Iran could launch a strike against Al Udeid, and that they would call it a day. Whether or not there was such a deal, one thing is clear. It was only at the very end of that brief conflict that Iran struck a U.S. military base in any significant way. What is happening here is radically different. So this time, the speed with which Iran has struck U.S. military bases and the extent and number of its strikes is not only impressive, it's actually, I think, quite surprising to a lot of observers. Certainly, one would think that they were surprised, given by the utter failure on their part to put up any kind of air defense. I mean, I've seen no indication whatsoever that the Arab vassals of Washington, who were openly warned by the Iranian government that they themselves would be targeted because they host U.S. military bases, any indication that they were prepared for this and that they had any kind of military capability to defend their own people and their own lands from retaliatory strikes by the Islamic Republic. Video has emerged of repeated Iranian attacks in the past 10 hours or so on U.S. assets and other targets in Bahrain, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Iraq, and even Jordan. I've also seen reports of Iranian attacks on U.S. military bases in Saudi Arabia, although I have yet to find video evidence of that. And all of these attacks appear to be ongoing. Here is a video of a U.S. sailor this morning in Bahrain freaking out when he suddenly realizes that the Trump regime has ensnared him in a real war.
Bro. Oh shit! Oh fuck! Oh shit! Oh! Oh shit! Oh fuck! Oh my god. Oh. Dude, fuck me. A fucking missile actually got through. Oh, there's more. I gotta get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, it's about time that all of you Yankee soldiers got the fuck out of there. And by there, I mean the entire region of West Asia. Now, resistance channels have already published many videos and photographs on other Iranian strikes on the large U.S. naval base in Bahrain. For example, there is this one.
Ya Allah! Ya Allah! Ya Allah! Ya.
Now, I don't speak Arabic, but that sounds potentially celebratory to me. Here's another video of a Bahrainis, I should say, possibly celebrating an Iranian missile strike on the U.S. naval base in Bahrain.
Ya Ali, ya Ali. ضربت. يا علي يا علي. سامي ده تحمل مسؤولية أنت. تحمل مسؤولية. الحين روح مساعة نقول لك احنا لو صادنا شي احنا داخل. احنا لو صادنا شي داخل من هو المسؤول؟ نقول لك كلمهم خلنا نمشي. روح جيب السيارة.
Now, unfortunately, I don't speak Arabic, and those who are watching today and who do speak Arabic, if you could perhaps indicate in the comment what that gentleman was saying, I'm most interested to know how he was reacting to that strike, and I'm sure other audience members would as well. It bears pointing out here that the political situation in Bahrain has always been rather dicey because the US-backed tyrant who has ruled with an iron fist over Bahrain for many years is a Sunni, but a majority of the population of Bahrain is Shia. And as I commented on X today, never was there a more opportune time for the Shia population of Bahrain to rise up against the traitorous autocrat who has oppressed them for so many years. Now, here is yet another video of an attack on Bahrain from Iran, this time a drone strike. And if I didn't know any better, I'd say that these witnesses were indeed celebrating.
مسيرة دي يا شباب مسيرة اضرب 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 عدل.
Is that Arabic for touchdown? I don't know. Again, Arabic speakers who care to weigh in, please let us know in the comments what those gentlemen were saying as the drone came in. Now might be an opportune moment for, as I may have already indicated, the Bahrainis to throw off the yoke of Western oppression by replacing the tyrant who oppresses them with one who represents the democratic will of the people of Bahrain. By the way, these and other videos of Iranian drone strikes today raise serious questions about the hugely expensive air defense systems that these Arab puppets have purchased from the West. I did not see in that video any indication that an air defense system tried to take down that drone. There were no interceptor missiles fired up from the ground towards the drone that I was able to see. And I've seen already video after video of drone strikes in states that are aligned with Washington coming in from Iran with absolutely no indication that the drones were engaged by air defense systems, whether successfully or unsuccessfully. And if these regimes are unable to take down relatively slow-moving and cheaply manufactured Iranian drones, how can they have any hope of defending their territory and the military assets in their territory from ballistic and hypersonic missile attacks from Iran? Bear in mind that places like Bahrain and Kuwait and the United Arab Emirates are very, very close to Iran. So they have little time to respond once the projectiles are launched from Iranian territory. And for them to effectively defend it, they have to have effective air defense systems and the training to use them effectively. And apparently they don't have either, based on what I've been able to see thus far. This just goes to confirm that aligning yourself with Washington is often a greater curse than actually insisting upon maintaining your own sovereignty in the face of Washington's aggression. These little statelets, which have groveled before the feet of American empire for so many years, now I think are seriously threatened by their outright obliteration if this doesn't come to an end damn soon. So let's have another glance at some of the U.S. targets struck by Iran today. Here is a video of a drone strike on Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. I'm going to show that to you again, and this time see if you can see any kind of interceptor missiles flying towards this drone. I wasn't able to see any. Now, I've read a report that the Iranian military targeted a high-rise in Dubai where U.S. military personnel, U.S. military officers, I understand, were reputed to reside. So I don't know whether that is accurate. I don't know if that is the building where they reside, but I certainly wouldn't want to be in that building at the time of the impact. And again, if U.S. air defenses can't stop that kind of a drone, then the U.S. vassals in the region are in huge trouble because they're very small, and Iran has a huge number of these relatively inexpensive drones, and its territory is very close to their territory. So I would imagine that the ultra-wealthy Zionist Emiratis are freaking out. But frankly, they brought this on themselves by normalizing with the genocidal entity and allowing their fake countries to be run, in effect, by the CIA and the Mossad. The tyrants of the United Arab Emirates are traitors who deserve to be treated as such by their own people, which is to say, hauled before a court of justice and tried for treason in accordance with due process of law. Now, here's another video of an Iranian missile strike on Abu Dhabi, the capital of the UAE. And by the way, I've seen other video and images of strikes on the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to show them all to you. It's clear that they are being pummeled, and this is something, of course, to which they are wholly unaccustomed as protectorates of the U.S. empire. So let's move to another part of the region. Here is the video of the aftermath of an Iranian missile strike on a U.S. military logistics facility in Kuwait.
اليوم وزارة التجارة والصناعة المعنية في ملف الأمن الغذائي اليوم نطمئنكم بأن الوضع التمويني مستقر تماما ولا يوجد أي نقص في المواد الغذائية الأساسية. كذلك حركة الأسواق طبيعية والسلع متوفرة في نقاط البيع والمخازن بشكل منتظم. إنتاج المياه بالمصانع المحلية مستمر على مدار الساعة لضمان تلبية احتياجات الجميع. سلاسل الإمداد تعمل بشكل طبيعي وسلس ولا توجد أي عوائق في تدفق السلع إلى الأسواق. كما أن الأسواق المركزية وجميع نقاط البيع تعمل بشكل طبيعي والجمعيات التعاونية تواصل نشاطها المعتاد.
There's more of that video, but you get the picture. That is quite a fire. I don't know whether that was an oil depot at that logistics facility, but it seems that that is not a fire that's going to be brought under control anytime soon. Here is a video of another, the aftermath of another strike. Actually, this is a video of the immediate aftermath of an apparent Iranian drone strike on an airport in Kuwait. As you can see, I was actually in a Kuwaiti airport. I don't know if it's that one that you just saw there. When I was traveling through the region in 2024, as part of Reason to Resist reporting on the genocidal entities' crimes in the area. Although I didn't spend a lot of time in Kuwait and have only been there that one time, it struck me as the kind of place that hasn't experienced this kind of conflict for quite a while, probably going all the way back to the invasion of Kuwait by the forces of Saddam Hussein. I believe it was in the early 1990s. So certainly the younger population there would not be accustomed to this sort of thing. But they've been sucked into it by their traitorous leaders who have hosted, military bases of the U.S. empire for a long time and have put themselves in a position where they were going to inevitably be drawn into a war of this nature against a formidable opponent. Now, here's a video of the aftermath of a drone strike, an Iranian drone strike on another part of West Asia, namely Qatar. Now, importantly, the Iranian military reports, again, I haven't been able to verify this, but it reports that it has destroyed completely an American early warning radar system in Qatar, and that radar was equipped with unique equipment used to track ballistic missiles. Apparently, it was worth more than $1 billion and had a very considerable range. So it was a key asset in America's, the U.S. military's air defense systems in the region. Resistance channels also report that Iran has struck the U.S. Mufawak Salti Air Base in Jordan. And here is a photograph taken of smoke rising up from what is reported to be an Iranian airstrike in the Hashemite kingdom. And quite apart from all of that, there was reportedly an attack on the Erbil, the U.S. airbase at Erbil in Iraq. And here you can see an image, a photograph taken after what appears to have been a strike on that airbase. Now, it's unclear whether that attack was launched by Iranian forces or by Iraqi resistance forces. We saw numerous reports on resistance channels early in the morning that the U.S. and Israelis had attacked the Popular Mobilization Forces headquarters or some other Popular Mobilization Forces facility in Iraq, which those forces being sympathetic to the government of Iran. And during the last several hours, one of the resistance groups in Iraq put out this statement. This is the Islamic Resistance in Iraq, or Saraya Aliyah al-Dam. And they said from the very first moment of the Zionist American aggression, the organization raised its maximum level of readiness to carry out jihadi operations against the ill-fated alliance in support of Iran. The hands of our fighters are now on the trigger, preparing to fire their live ammunition at all American military sites inside Iraq and beyond, considering them legitimate targets for the Islamic resistance without restriction or condition governing the rules of engagement. That doesn't sound good. What they have begun will not be theirs to end, the statement goes on. Rather, it will be ended by the fighters, and it is Allah's promise of victory. From here, we pledge the guardian of the Muslims' affairs, the leader of the Islamic Revolution, His Eminence Sayyid al-Khamenei, to fight under his banner until the last breath. Let these blessed days of Ramadan be a new Karbala through which we seek to attain one of the two best outcomes, victory on the battlefield or victory through martyrdom in the path of Allah. And I think that last sentiment is really quite important, something that the U.S. Leadership seems incapable of understanding, and even the Israelis themselves. Amongst the Shia, it is a religious duty and an honor to die in a struggle against injustice and for the purpose of achieving justice. And in my interactions with Shia members of resistance groups in West Asia over the past several years, it certainly has been my strong impression that this is a passionately and sincerely held belief on their part. They regard this as a religious duty and an honor. And I think that is one of the many reasons why the Trump and Netanyahu regimes have now bitten off more than we can chew, or they can chew, I should say. Of course, all of that remains to be seen. And whatever the outcome ultimately will be, this has all the makings of an utterly disastrous and bloody war that could endure for some time. So let's move on and also note that Ansar Allah, who are oftentimes referred to as the Houthis, they shouldn't be referred to as the Houthis. The Houthis are a people in Yemen. Ansar Allah is a political movement, and it is the one that currently governs a large part of Yemen and is headquartered or based in Sana'a, the capital of Yemen. They reportedly have announced that they will resume their attacks on complicit ships in the Red Sea. So here is the statement from Ansar Allah, or at least a report about Ansar Allah's announcement. This is in the Times of Israel, published a few hours ago. The Iranian-backed Houthis in Yemen have decided to resume missile and drone attacks on shipping routes on Israel in support of Iran, according to two senior Houthi officials who spoke in condition of anonymity. One of the officials said the rebels' first attack could come as soon as tonight. And the rebels, the report says, ceased their attacks on Red Sea shipping as part of a deal with the Trump administration that also halted U.S. strikes against the Houthis. What is not mentioned here, this is actually an Associated Press report republished by the Times of Israel, but in any case, what is not mentioned here is that the United States deployed massive naval assets to put a stop to those attacks and failed. Basically sailed out of the Red Sea with its tail between its legs after losing some very expensive fighter jets that were stationed aboard an aircraft carrier in the region, and spending months dodging relatively inexpensive drones and missiles launched from Yemeni territory. All of these attacks, by the way, on Red Sea shipping were designed to apply pressure on Israel to stop its genocide, a fact that was studiously ignored by the corporate media. But for our purposes today, what really matters is, they tried for months to subdue Ansar Allah. They failed to do it. If they can't subdue Ansar Allah, how are they going to subdue Iran? That's an obvious question that no one has even attempted in a credible way to answer over the past few months. And if the world and the military forces of the United States and its allies are confronted by the closure of both the Red Sea to commercial traffic and the Strait of Hormuz, we are talking here about potential economic havoc. So that brings me to the Strait of Hormuz. And this was a statement put out on resistance channels just a few hours ago. Iran imposes a blockade on the Strait of Hormuz. Tanker traffic has been halted. This is from the official Iranian news agency Fars. The world may face serious delays in oil supplies. Tanker traffic in the Strait of Hormuz area has been halted, reported the Iranian news agency. So, the importance of this really cannot be overstated. About 1/5 of global oil and petroleum product consumption flows through this strait, averaging 20 million barrels per day in 2024. Expert analysts predict that the price of oil could soar to more than $200 per barrel if the Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed for an extended period of time. As of yesterday, the price of oil was at around $70 a barrel. So we're talking about, an almost 200% increase, and possibly in excess of a 200% increase very, very quickly. That is going to have catastrophic effects on the global economy. It doesn't matter where you get your oil, because the price of oil is not determined specifically by where your jurisdiction happens to find it, but rather by overall global supply and global demand. And if global supply contracts considerably because of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, and to a lesser extent the closure of Red Sea shipping, then inevitably, unless if demand remains more or less constant, there is going to be a huge increase in the price of oil, and that affects almost everything in our oil-based economy. So this is potentially a disastrous situation for the global economy, and the global economy, particularly in the West, is rather fragile, and there is plenty of evidence that stock markets are in a bubble, and that a lot of the major financial institutions of the West are basically zombie institutions that have been propped up by government support for many years, ever since the global financial crisis, and are hanging by a thread. So it is not at all beyond the realm of imagination that if the Strait of Hormuz and the Red Sea remained off limits to commercial shipping and oil tankers for an extended period of time, that we would not only see a drastic increase in the price of oil and inflation in many various segments of the economy, but that we might experience a financial crisis, and potentially one that is much worse than the last one of 2008, 2009. And this is something about which experts have been warning for months. But the Americans and Israelis, heedless of the sensible counsel of these many economic experts and petroleum industry analysts, have pressed ahead anyways. I should point out that in a video I put out recently, which was entitled "My Apology to the People of Iran," where I spoke about my regret for what our countries are doing to Iran and to the people of Iran, and my fears of what this war would ultimately do, not only to Iran, but also to the broader region. I offered humbly a piece of advice to the Iranian people, and that is that if they were attacked, they should shut down the Strait of Hormuz immediately. And the reason why I suggested that they should do that is because there are far too many people in the West, I'm sad to say, who will only oppose wars of this nature, criminal, destructive wars of this nature launched by their own governments, if and when those wars have an immediate, significant detrimental impact on them. And my view was then and is now that the best way, the fastest way to bring this war to an end quickly is to incentivize people in the West to pressure their governments to stop it. So I'm not suggesting that my video had any impact on the thinking of the Iranian government, but I am frankly reassured, although I think this is not going to be good for the global economy. I'm somewhat reassured by the fact that they didn't waste any time in closing the Strait of Hormuz, because I want to see this war come to an end as quickly as possible, particularly before it has an opportunity to expand beyond the region of West Asia, which very well might happen if it goes on for some time. And so, as I say, I wish this weren't the case, but I think if people feel some impacts, negative impacts economically on themselves in the West, they're more likely to apply pressure on their governments to put an end to this horror. So with that, let's talk about what has happened within the genocidal entity itself since it launched these criminal attacks on Iran. And by the way, I should mention that I think part of the reason why Trump chose this timing, which is to say launching these attacks in the early hours of Saturday, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, Montreal time, I think it was because he wanted to give the markets, he wanted the markets to be closed, the stock markets, at the time the attacks began, and give them a couple of days to absorb the news, and give himself an opportunity to manage the news and misrepresent what's actually happening there, to calm the markets down. If he had actually launched this attack while the markets were open, that could have led to some uncontrollable consequences in massive fluctuations in stock price movements, potentially triggering defaults or other negative contractual obligations of major financial institutions. So it strikes me that this was probably done early Saturday morning in order to enable Trump to better manage the stock market fallout. But as I say, he's only got 2 days before markets open again on Monday morning to try to get this thing under control. And all indications are at this moment that it is not even remotely under the control of the U.S. government, what is unfolding there. And that, again, brings us to the genocidal entity itself. Now, let's recall, before I talk about what's happened in Israel in the last 15 hours or so, that the genocidal regime arrests people for publishing photos and videos of targets struck by Iran on the territory of occupied Palestine. And on top of that, Israeli media operate under a strict military censorship regime, particularly in times of war. And so far, they're obliged to be very tight-lipped about the damage. Nonetheless, Israeli media report that Iran has launched several waves of ballistic missiles at Israel, amounting to dozens of missiles. And some videos, not many, have emerged of damage in the genocidal entity. This video I'm going to show you shows the aftermath of an Iranian missile strike on a multi-story building in Haifa in occupied Palestine. And what it looks like there is a missile penetrated several floors of a multi-story building. Not clear whether that missile actually exploded, but I would imagine that in order for that missile to be able to penetrate, those thick concrete slabs and go through several floors, it had to be traveling at a very, very high velocity. And here is a video of the aftermath of an Iranian missile strike in a suburb of Tel Aviv that set dozens of buses ablaze this morning.
מינימום אוטובוסים 20, הלכו? מינימום אוטובוסים 20 הלכו. 20 אוטובוסים בערך הלכו.
Now, those are not the only videos I've seen of damage in Israel. I saw a video which was reportedly of a structure burning at night in some part of Tel Aviv. I saw another video taken during the daytime of smoke rising up from an area of the Galilee where a missile had struck. So again, because of the very strict control the Israeli military exercises over the flow of information at moments like this, it is really hard to gauge how extensive the damage may or may not be. But I will say this, there's good reason to believe that Iran is saving its better missiles for latter stages of this war, and that it's using its older, less sophisticated and damaging missiles to deplete Israel's already very limited supply of interceptor missiles. After 4 years of war in Ukraine and all the wars that Israel has been waging illegally over the past 2+ years, weapon stocks, as the Pentagon has told the American press recently, are very, very low. And it won't take a lot of effort on the part of Iran, I would suggest, to deplete the interceptor missile stocks that remain to Israel and the United States. So I think what we're likely seeing at this stage is nowhere close to the most destructive missiles and drones that Iran can use to retaliate. Now, a couple of points I want to make before I complete my report. Number one, let us never forget that the ultimate responsibility for this disaster lies with Western governments, because Israel, it can't be said too much, really. Israel is a pipsqueak of a country territorially, from the point of view of natural resources, from a population perspective, economically. It could never get away with the things it has done in West Asia since its existence was declared, over 75 years ago, without the full-throated and multifarious support of Western governments. And because they have protected one Israeli leader after another from the consequences of his or her own criminality, Israeli leaders, military and civilian, have become increasingly audacious, arrogant, and reckless over the years. And they will continue to become more audacious, arrogant, and reckless in the days ahead, unless and until they are held accountable for their crimes to a meaningful degree. Which brings me finally to a poll released yesterday by Gallup, which showed that in the United States, sympathy for Palestinians now surpasses the level of sympathy for Israelis. You'll see that the poll found that 41% say that their sympathies lie more with the Palestinians and only 36% with the Israelis. And by the way, that support, that 36%, is overwhelmingly older people who are right-wing. So younger people, even in conservative movements in the Republican Party, are not nearly as well disposed to the genocidal Israeli entity as older conservatives and Republicans. And eventually those younger people are going to become the leaders of the Republican Party and conservative movements. So Israel is in real trouble, folks, from a public relations perspective. And I suggest to you that this war isn't going to help. It's only going to get worse. This war was already opposed by a large majority of Americans. Only something like 21% supported it. And if this thing begins to have detrimental impacts on Americans and their families, one can easily imagine that their ire will be focused primarily on Israel. And that is going to be particularly true if Americans begin to suffer significant casualties in this war. And they may already have suffered significant casualties in this war on those attacks on U.S. military bases in the region. So all in all, I think Tucker Carlson is quite right to say that this is Israel's last chance to wage this war. And it may ultimately be the war that is ultimately the undoing of Israel. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Montreal, Canada on February 28th, 2026.